We Shouldn't Talk About This may contain graphic descriptions and/or explicit content that may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Key,
And I'm V.
and this is episode 3 of We Shouldn't Talk About This.
Third episode. Third time's a charm. Three times lucky. Is that what they say?
Three-eyed Willie? I don't know.
Yeah, really.
Well, we're back again with another set of crimes. I wanted to say against humanity, but we're not playing that game right now.
Yeah. And this one's kind of different because these are more of like disasters, aren't they?
Yeah, but like corporate kind of caused the disasters.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Things that could have been avoided.
Absolutely.
But hey, that is another topic for another. Well, no, actually, that's the topic for today.
Top for today.
So, let's get rolling on this river and start on episode 3.
Let's go.
So, I guess what we shouldn't talk about today are man-made disasters.
And man-made disasters are pretty bad, especially
Yeah.
when it affects towns and people,
Communities.
animals.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
So, gather around, children. Let me spin you a yarn.
We have a lovely story for you today. A story about disasters and corporations that caused them.
And dreams, big dreams, that unfortunately turned into big disasters. Well, I don't know about V's story, but it started with the dream. So, without any further ado, let's get into it.
All right. Key, you may definitely start this one off. I have to get myself ready for all my scientific big words I'll be using for this episode.
Okay, no problem. I don't think well, the names of the chemicals are kind of those type of words that your tongue trips over, but we're gonna power through this one. Because this is, to me, like a very crazy story, especially like when I get to the end and tell you like what's going on with it current day. You're gonna be blown away.
Oh, jeez.
Like, I don't know if you are a Seinfeld watcher like I am, but when Jerry says something like unbelievable to Elaine and she's like, "Get out!" and she pushes him like really hard, he like falls against stuff. That's what you're gonna do at the end of the story.
Well, I hope you're ready to get pushed over then.
Brace my shoulders. Alright, so my story today is about Love Canal, which sounds so sweet.
It does.
So, William T. Love came to William T. Love came to 1890s Niagara Falls, New York, with hugely ambitious plans. The landowner and entrepreneur envisioned the creation of an enormous utopian metropolis. His alias was Lex Luthor? No.
I was about to, when you said Metropolis, I was thinking Superman immediately.
His city would be home to enviable industry and housing for more than 1 million people. 1 million!
1 million? That's 2 commas.
Thousands of acres would become the most extensive and beautiful park in the world. He planned to power the city using hydroelectric dams on a new 11-kilometer canal between the upper and lower Niagara rivers. Within a year, however, these 1890s were a rough time. Love's plans failed and would quickly have been forgotten if it weren't for one problem. One part of Love City that had been built was a kilometer-long pit that would have been part of the canal. And after decades, this pit was purchased by the city of Niagara Falls, which had decided that it would make an ideal location for a much needed chemical dumping site. Thanks, Niagara Falls. After the pit was filled with waste, a neighborhood was built directly on top of it.
Ooh.
By the 1970s, the Love Canal had become the site of one of the worst environmental disasters in American history. Now, back in 1892, it seemed inconceivable that Love's plans would fall apart so dramatically. He was driven, charismatic, and he filled his brochures with wild promises and other hyperbole. Yes, hyperbole.
Did he sell like magical tonics too?
And snake oil.
Snake oil. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So the idea, see, this is so horrendous, I'm gonna have to laugh my way through it. The idea of a new city among the greatest manufacturing cities in the United States drew many supporters and investors. The following year saw construction begin on the canal. Then Love's ideas were quashed fairly quickly by a combination of factors. The fluctuation of the economy scared off the investors. The discovery of how electricity could be efficiently transmitted over long distances made Love's Canal seem unnecessary. Damn you, Tesla. And local politicians prohibited the diversion of the river's water altogether. And thus, Love's ambitions evaporated almost overnight. The pit remained, filling with rainwater and becoming a local recreation area. Swimming in the summer, skating in the winter, because it is New York after all. Mm. Now, in 1920, the land was sold to nearby Niagara Falls, as we stated, a growing industrial town that immediately started using the pit as dumping ground for chemical waste. This continued for more than 20 years, after which the Hooker Chemical and Plastics Corporation, now a part of Occidental Petroleum or OxyChem, purchased the land for their own chemical disposal.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
We had the name Love, and now we have the name Hooker. I'm getting so twisted by these names right now. All right, continue.
Well, get your mind out the gutter, because it's not going that way.
It's going to the pit.
So, 20 years of Niagara Falls doing their dumping, only to be bought by a chemical and plastic companies so that they can do their own chemical dumping there. By 1953, the company had buried nearly 22,000 tons of waste, and the pit was virtually full. Now, a ton is 1,000 pounds.
2,000.
No. I'm gonna ask Google.
Please do.
Google. I am so sure that a ton is 1,000 pounds.
Nah, it's 2,000.
Okay, Google. How many pounds is 1 ton?
1 U.S. ton is equal to 2,000 pounds.
Blimey.
Why does she sound like that? Why does it sound like she's in a tunnel? Ghostbusters. You remember that game?
Damn it, Google. Why are you out gallivanting when I need answers? So, 2,000 pounds for each ton. That is a lot of chemical waste.
I hate humans so much.
22,000 tons of waste. Now, at the time in 1953, The dangers of chemical waste were almost entirely unknown. Why? Because nobody wants to say, hey, chemicals can be bad. Maybe we should find a proper way to dispose of them. That's going to cost us money. Let's just turn a blind eye.
My son was born with 8 fingers. Well, you're a witch, madam.
Really? That has nothing to do with that glowing green pond over there. Oh, so, far from being alarmed or even wary of living next to a major chemical producer, the city's residents were delighted at the medical and other developments that the chemical industry was bringing in. No one thought that the same companies could engage in any potentially dangerous activities. Love Canal was now this right here is what blows my mind. Love Canal was lined with clay and covered with dirt to supposedly seal it. And Hooker's chemical experts declared it safe.
What?
So you throw some clay and some dirt on top of something and it will be safe. But also the company that's doing it are the ones declaring it safe. So
Yeah. That leaves little in the way of, believability.
right, that really should have been a red flag there. Only the occasional scientist could recognize the dangers of chemical waste in the 1940s. One, a Dr. Robert Mobbs, had explored the link between insecticides and cancer, which he would later strongly denounce Hooker Chemical as not just careless, but also aware of the potential danger for its dumping ground. But it's not certain whether Hooker suspected potential effects of its waste products. However, this is the other kicker. The company sold Love Canal for, guess how much? Wait, before you make, if you had a dumping ground, you put 22,000 tons of waste in, and it was virtually full and it no longer served a purpose for you, what would you be willing to part for it for?
Free.
Let's say you had to have a price because it was a business transaction.
Oh, okay. Had to have a price. I would need a way to get away, so I would definitely have to have a couple of horses or a carriage or something, And in that time, I guess I would say $500.
Okay. So, Love Canal was sold by Hooker Chemical for a single dollar. And what is also suspicious is the carefully worded disclaimer that Hooker included with the sale, stating that they could not be held legally responsible for any side effects from chemical exposure.
That was just blatantly in the bill of sale.
That was their point. Like, we'll sell it to you for $1 as long as we're not going to be held responsible for anything that happens.
See, that's why I said free, and then my next answer was going to be $1, but I was like, okay, I joked this time, I should be serious this time. But yeah, $1 because now it's off my hands, I'm running.
Basically.
Yeah, you give me $1, it's all yours, my man.
They wipe their
seriously.
No takesies backsies.
Yeah, seriously.
So again, another red flag, people. Nobody sells you acres and acres of land for $1 and a get out of jail free card.
That's literally
for themselves.
That's literally an email of the 19th century. A scam email of the 19th century.
Right. They should have sold them a couple bridges as well. Okay. Either way, these subtle warnings were not the red flags that they should have been. The Niagara Falls Board of Education, which was in urgent need of more classroom space, eagerly purchased the land and began constructing a new elementary school. In 1955, 400 children began attending the school as about 100 homes were built in the surrounding area. Almost all of the residents of Niagara Falls knew what the land had previously been used for and were not cautioned about living on it. Unsurprisingly, the direct effects of the pit's contents were soon felt. Strange odors and substances were reported by residents, especially those with basements. Pieces of phosphorus made their way to the surface. Children in the schoolyard were burnt by toxic waste.
Wow.
Local officials were alerted and took no action. In 1976, water from heavy rains and a record-breaking blizzard caused a significant amount of chemical waste to migrate to the surface, where it contaminated the whole neighborhood. In the following years, it was stricken with higher than normal rates of stillbirths and miscarriages. Many babies were born with birth defects. Informal studies at the time noted the frightening trend. One, by Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, observed more than 400 types of chemicals in the air, water, soil, with some of them being benzene, which was already known to be carcinogenic. Now, there was really one standout mother, Lois Gibbs. After reading about the history of Love Canal in a local publication, she realized her young son, Michael, had been constantly ill since starting a new school. So she asked for her son to be transferred. When this failed, she went door to door to her neighbors with a petition to close the school. The situation turned out to be even worse than she thought, though. Her rounds made it clear that the entire neighborhood was ill. Now, Gibbs went on to lead the campaign to call attention to the neighborhood, and she was joined by many local parents as well as the editors of the Niagara Falls Gazette. Finally, in the spring of 1978, Health Commissioner Dr. Robert P. Whalen declared the area around Love Canal hazardous. The school was closed, the land was sectioned off, and more than 200 families in the immediate area were evacuated. By August of that year, the hazardous site was receiving national attention. On August 7th, President Jimmy Carter called upon the Federal Disaster Assistance Agency for its help. In September, Dr. Whalen released an intensive report on the disaster, which read in part, "The profound and devastating effects of Love Canal tragedy in terms of human health and suffering and environmental damage cannot and probably will never fully be measured. We cannot undo the damage that has been wrought at Love Canal, but we can take appropriate preventive measures so that we are better able to anticipate and hopefully prevent future events of this kind." Lawsuits were quick to arrive, and lo and behold, Hooker Chemical found itself being sued for more than $11 billion.
$11 billion?
$11 billion.
What year was this?
We have jumped. This was pretty much 79.
1979?
Yes.
Okay.
So all the construction and everything started in the 50s, like after all the stuff had been buried.
Okay.
So the corporation, of course, denied its involvement, and even denied it when faced with the Federal Justice Department. They were like, "Hey, we sold it. It's not our issue no more. We gave them a fair price." And also basically the biggest loophole we could find to keep ourselves from being in trouble. However, a great deal of damage has still been done, and eventually more than 1,000 families had to be moved out of the Love Canal area. An EPA study revealed that of the 36 people tested, 11 had chromosomal damage. And that of 15 Love Canal babies born between 79 or January 79 and January 80, only 2 were healthy.
Wow.
The agencies at the state and federal level spent hundreds of millions trying to clean up the pollution. Of that, Hooker Chemical has eventually been persuaded to contribute about 130 million. Now, one good thing that came out of this disaster was the creation of the Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act, more commonly known as the Superfund Law. Its aim is to collect taxes from gas and chemical corporations to be used directly to clean up any site similar to Love Canal. And OxyChem, the company that bought Hooker, now lists making chemical plants safer and more environmentally sound as one of its goals. Now, in the early 90s, now this was 79, this got to the point where the president had to declare it a national state of emergency, evacuate all the families that lived there, and then in the early 1990s, parts of the area were declared safe again and now make up a neighborhood known as Black Creek Village. The area was taken off the Superfund list in September 2004, and that was at the announcement that certain cleanup goals had been reached. Much of the canal itself, however, remains sectioned off by chain link fence because everyone knows chain link is the one thing that chemicals cannot get through, which to any local passerby must serve as a poignant reminder of the whole catastrophe. Now, as of 2018, it had been 40 years since Niagara Falls' most infamous neighborhood was declared a federal health emergency. And part of it, as I stated, is not populated by people who, except for a few people, because in my research I did find that the residents, especially Miss Gibbs, was trying to get the government to pay for their houses so that they can have money to relocate. And once they finally reached the settlement, all but 76 families decided to leave. So they must have hated their families. So that part of it that is now the Black Creek Village, with the exception of a few old timers that did stay, have moved in since the neighborhood was reopened in 1990. And a lot of those people live in the houses that were abandoned back in 79 and 80. The fence encloses a 40-acre containment area. 40 acres. But Love Canal is still a problem in the northern end that they resettled. People there are now complaining about being sick. They're finding contaminants there. The 40 acres contains some of the deadliest toxins ever created by the chemical industry. Dioxin, lindane, benzene hexachloride, chlorobenzene, and dozens more compounds. It's basically a chemical stew that is like 25 feet deep in some spots and is buried beneath a plastic liner and 18 inches of oil. Oh, no, of soil, not oil. To this day, 5 million gallons of leachate a year drips into the trench around the waste pit, but is being tracked by 150 monitoring wells, according to the State Department of Environmental Conservation. It is pre-treated on site and then pumped into the city sewers because that seems super safe. Let it spread to other areas of New York.
Yeah.
But here's what one current resident of Love Canal had to say. Everybody knows about Love Canal. Let it die. We choose to live here. If there's a problem, we'll take care of it. Just leave it alone. Stop bringing it up year after year. Look, sir, when your babies come out with 8 legs and half of a head, there's no fixing that.
Yeah, no.
But that's your choice. It's your life. Do you, boo?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It was, like, it's crazy for known residents to act that way, too.
No, it's crazy to move there after such a big disaster. All those
Yeah.
kids were sick. People, like adults, were sick. Kids were being born with all kinds of deformities and chromosomal abnormalities. And yet you choose to move there just because it's cheap, even though your house is right there off of 40 acres of wasteland. And then, like, they did interview Miss Gibbs some years later, and she had moved to Virginia. And she said within about 2 years, one of her kids' epilepsy had stopped. Her son, Michael, he wasn't sickly anymore. Like, it is a direct link between breathing in that air. The water is probably contaminated from underground. The puddles that were in the streets and on the playgrounds. As soon as they moved away, after a couple years, no more problems.
Who would have thought?
But that's my story. That's Love Canal.
Wow, that's crazy. And all started with a dream on that one.
It did.
Man, got a century's worth of problems after he passed on. That's crazy. Now my story is my story is a little tougher to work around. One, because it happened in Italy, and as a native English speaker, these Italian words are going to not sound like Italian words at all.
Don't worry, I used to date an Italian dude. I got you.
Okay, great. And this case takes place in the 70s. So, the 70s, was a very experimental time.
Yeah.
And the chemical company in subject is the IC Mesa chemical company. And IC Mesa is an acronym for Industrie Chimiche Associata Azionaria.
Chemical industry. Wait, say the next part.
MEDA.
MEDA?
MEDA. MEDA.
Middle, maybe.
Sociate.
Social.
Azionaria. Azionaria. AZIONARIA.
Area.
Industrial Chemical Middle Society Area.
Oh, I was so close.
No. I was just repeating what you said.
Oh.
Don't get excited after repeating
I got
what you
real
said.
excited.
No, I don't have a translation. I should have seen if I could translate that, but I didn't even think about it. But anyway, so this company was actually, it was just a normal chemical company. They were making 2,4,5-trichlorphenol, which is a toxic substance used in herbicides and for the preparation of hexachlorophene, which is used in cosmetics. So, kind of standard stuff, like, some ease of life chemicals, if you will. And what really went wrong in this case was that the directors of the company were just terrible directors. They just were not responsible. They weren't using, safety measures. They weren't regulating things how they're supposed to be. And essentially it led to an explosion which affected hundreds of thousands of innocent people and animals alike.
Oh, you know what? I just realized. I think the last word is association, not area. Okay, go ahead.
So my Google Translate says Chemical Industries MEDA Equity Company. So MEDA Equity Company. I don't know. It's
Obviously, Mita isn't a real word. Can't trick us. We have Google.
Mita is someone's name or something. But yeah, okay. So 2,4,5 dash trichlorophenol, which we're gonna call TCP at this point, and then also there was use.
Did you know that's in cereals?
TCP.
Yep.
With cereals. Good cereals.
Cereals marketed to children. I don't want to say any names because I don't want us to get thrown off the podcast air before we even get really started.
Well, it says right here, like, in the bleaching process of pulp and paper mills, that it can be released. So maybe in the bleaching process of some cereal, like, coloration, it get released and they have the good ingredients. Maybe.
Maybe.
But along with that, another thing that can come from it is 2378 tetrachlorodibenzo-dioxin, which was related in your waste case.
Yep, because mine, they also buried the 2,4,5.
So yeah, they're both of those line up together, and both of those are extremely toxic to humans. So, around midday, Saturday, July 10th, 1976, an explosion occurred in a TCP reactor of the Icy Mesa chemical plant on the outskirts of Mita. Oh, okay, so Mita's a town. A small town about 20 kilometers north of Milan, Italy. A toxic cloud containing TCDD, which is the dibenzodioxin, then widely spread in the atmosphere, and the cloud went about 6 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide,
Yeesh.
lying downwind from the area to towns and municipalities below. Municipalities below. And
fast break.
Yes.
What you just said reminds me of a cartoon that used to come on called The Oblongs.
Oblongs?
Yes, and their theme song says, down in the valley where a chemical spill came from the people at the top of the hill. You've got to Google it and look it up.
I think I remember these characters like really freaky.
Yeah, like they were all deformed, but when you said like the cloud went downhill.
Oh yeah.
Okay, anyway.
So the four most impacted included Seveso, Mira, Dacio, and Casano Madrino. And then two other municipalities were subjected to post-accidental restrictions, and this was Barlesina and Bovicio Macago. And health monitoring was extended to 5 further municipalities.
Yeah, because clouds can travel. Like, they can't contain clouds.
No, you cannot. No, when anything toxic becomes a gas, it is pretty volatile that it is kept in a building, but if there's an explosion, then it's airborne, and there's nothing but gas in the air, so it's just gonna be with friends and thrive in that environment. So pretty much like I was saying, what was going on was that there was just irresponsibility at the factory. So at the time of the Seveso disaster, that's what we'll be calling this disaster, the Seveso dioxin disaster. The complexity of communication problems under conditions of severe uncertainty was recognized, if not fully managed. Before the gas release, no one outside the plant, neither residents, politicians, or health authorities, had any idea that there was a hazard of such magnitude. The explosion and release were greeted by incredulity, followed by alarm and dismay. The firm's initial behavior led to subsequent suspicion about their motives. Various instructions for precautionary measures were issued almost immediately, but the firm denied knowledge of the toxic substances involved. 10 days passed before the firm confirmed that the dioxin had been released. Only then did the governmental authorities and the public learn that there was a grave risk. Animals, birds died.
Of course.
Household pets like cats and dogs bled from their nose and mouths.
Gosh.
Chickens were affected, of course, birds, but people who ate the chickens became terminally sick. And the first people to realize this were farmers, you know.
Of course.
And then after that, they started realizing basically anything with it. So it's basically a biohazardous at this point. So any kind of if one of your pets used the bathroom outside, that stuff's out there. And so if a chicken goes into that, they're spreading it to other things in that whole ecosystem. Everything's getting affected. And children were getting terminally sick and dying. Adults were getting terminally sick and dying also. It was just
horrible.
It was just a terminal thing altogether. And the gas was burning eyes, and skin is very sensitive to it. So just it's terrible. But back to this. Only then did they know they're in great risk. Even so, it was impossible to assess the danger with any precision. There was an onset of genuine dread about sickness in general and about malformed babies in particular. The widespread illness and death of animals and many other species was an ominous sign. The authorities had their own severe problems of decision making under uncertainty, including the definition of different polluted zones, programs. It's weird. It's programs with an E on it. It's like a European spelling. Programs of evacuation of endangered residents and disposal of contaminated materials. From the beginning of the disaster, situational uncertainty was salient. Decisions had to be taken, sometimes under conditions of great urgency and the nearly complete absence of information that might guide actions. Scientific uncertainty was salient, as shown by the fact that local investigating magistrates closed off the site within 8 days of the accident. Societal uncertainty was severe because there had been no previous institutional preparation or consultation for the accident.
Right, because how can you contain that once it's in the air? It's in the air.
Yes, that's it.
If it starts to rain, then it's really going to spread. Then it's going to be like acid rain coming down. Oh my gosh.
And then after that, legal and moral uncertainty was also severe. The technical director of IC Mesa found himself under arrest when he attended a works meeting 12 days after the incident. He was probably one of the people, responsible for the thing to begin with. And the director of production was placed under arrest at that time and was assassinated 4 years later.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Italy wasn't effing around.
They ruined people. They ruined people's lives, and it's terrible. It was really awful. Benzodioxin was used in other stuff too before this. It was used as a chemical weapon in places before, but this incident was 4 times greater than the last time it was ever used.
Wow.
And that last time it was ever used was in the Vietnam War. So yeah, so this incident was 4 times greater than the amount used in Vietnam War.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was literally used as a weapon there, but this was just an accident. It's quite awful. So the estimated toll of those affected is 200,000 people. And this was in the 70s, the population was still pretty great in all these places, but not to the scope of what it is now. But 200,000 people in the 1970s and a couple of Italian villages, that's a lot of people.
Right, and that's probably just what they know of. Just think of the people who were eating food or animals that didn't know, that thought they just randomly got sick.
Yeah.
Or got food poisoning, from just a normal means of, this wasn't cooked well enough.
Right, yeah. The fact that the IC Mesa factory was already sequestered would have made it highly imprudent for its owners to withhold information about the contaminants. And in it was noted at the time that the dioxin threat had already been publicized by the media before it was officially confirmed. Later, and off the Sebaceous site, proprietary uncertainty was now as low, particularly in connection with the disposal of barrels containing toxic materials. From 1982 onwards, stories of concealment and blunders began to circulate, and these have not yet ended. So, so to this day, like no one still knows what in the world, happened, what in the world was going on, like what their plans were to like increase production so much that it exploded in their factory.
Greed. That's what it was. Their plans were make as much money as possible with as little actual money going into making sure things are safe and done correctly.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that. I really wish mine had a couple more names, but it's all pretty much about just like the chemical factory and then the list of like the places affected and everything. Because even that line just says like the director was asked about it and nothing, just withholding information.
Yeah, I mean, because who's going to admit, like, yes, we overlooked safety regulations. Yes, we knew this was dangerous, but we were trying to cut corners and save money.
Right. Yeah. Because if that's your that's your livelihood, that's your I guess that's your background as working in chemical factories. You're not gonna it makes something like that jeopardize your future because if you're in jail for it, well, I mean like if everyone agrees it's an accident, like everyone who was interrogated says it was an accident, then how much can you arrest them for that?
Right. I mean, you could probably say, okay, well, maybe you guys are being negligent, do better next time, but like you can't really prove that it was like
yeah, like intentional.
Yeah, because it probably, I mean, I'm 92% sure that it wasn't intentional because they also reap the effects of it. It's not like they could explode the plant and then be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like their children, their families, their farms, if they had one, were all in jeopardy when it happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was crazy. Like that's scary. Like what if like a plant just exploded? Like the air will just swoop that on where it wants to go.
Yeah, exactly. And really all you can do is just get indoors and that's it. If you have a bunker, definitely get in that bunker, but anything in the air, and we have filters, but filters can't stop harmful toxins.
Right, and now it's like now that the chemical threat of war isn't as great as it was back in like the 30s, 40s, 50s. They don't even make houses with bunkers here anymore.
Yeah.
They've like paved over all of them, but I really want one, like just to say I have a bunker.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. It'd be a pretty cool chill out spot.
I don't know about all that, but
I mean, if there's nice lighting and stuff and electricity, got a TV down there.
These were built back in the day, so it's probably not going to be as fancy as you're imagining.
Oh yeah, because I'm thinking video game status, you get a bunker, you got full amenities and everything.
This is probably
MTV
one light
cribs.
bulb on a string, if that.
Oh yeah, the ones that just hang from the ceiling and swing around.
Right, if they could even get electricity underground during those years. Like it might be candles and flashlights.
Yeah, I'm serious though. If you were to get a bunker, there should be like an MTV crib style, tour of it. That would be pretty cool.
It would be as big as this room we're in right now.
It's very true, very true.
Well, that episode 3 feels like it just went by super quick.
Yeah, there was a lot of storytelling in episode 3, but a lot of things that people don't realize, like how much chemicals affect our everyday lives. We use products with chemicals in them all the time.
Right.
These factories, they're just dumping these things in our backyard, in our rivers, in our waterfalls, letting too much bureau up and explode, and just hiding it.
And who can do anything about it? The government is going to be on the side of whoever makes money, which is going to be the companies, not the people.
Right.
So that was a sad turn of events.
Yeah.
Wow, we just really brought that one down. So to bring it back up, everybody, go on YouTube and search for the Oblongs and watch that cartoon. It was like 2 seasons, and I even emailed the creator and was like, is there ever going to be another season coming out? And he was like, I don't know, I hope so. This was like some years ago, maybe like 10 years ago. And he was like, I don't know, I hope so. But unfortunately, I think 2 seasons is all we got. But it's super funny.
I vaguely remember it. I remember it being like kind of disturbing. Mostly because like, you know, I was a kid and like, you know.
Like the dad had no arms and no legs.
Yeah.
The son, Milo, he had like some kind of extreme form of like ADD. Their 2 older sons were conjoined twins.
Yeah.
Their daughter had like a penis growing out of her head.
Yeah, the mom had huge boobs.
No, she didn't have any hair. She was like bald, but she always wore like a really funny wig, and she was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So, but it was like, I think everybody in the valley were the poor people, and everybody on the hill were the rich people. So like all the chemicals from the hill people were like contaminating all the valley people.
Look up Oblongs on YouTube.
Yes, it's there.
It's there. And thank you so much for listening to us today for our 3rd episode on chemicals and their
chemical disasters, their far-reaching effects, and how we're not safe at all, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm V.
And I'm Key.
And thanks for listening to what we had to say today.
And maybe come back.